Who's hanging young hero besides your head and spirit? That soul is saying something profound, so let them hear it.
Welcome to Giant Size Violence, a Toku Comics podcast. I'm your host, Tommy, and joining me today is a frequent friend of the show. He's my original podcasting co-host, my favorite collaborator, and my go-to comics expert, Nate. Welcome back to the show, man.
Happy to be here. Had a lot of fun doing a Gray Man episode.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to having you back for a while. And
yeah, it's nice to just be able to assess over a topic for a couple weeks to prepare. Since I'm no longer doing like the major host or something, I can just focus on one thing and like really think it out and just talk about it.
Yeah, and for today's general topic, rather than focusing on any one book or show or movie, we're actually going to be covering a swath of content from the Transformers franchise. To coincide with the 40th anniversary of Transformers, we're going to be talking about 4 different incarnations of the series. And we got this idea after catching the 40th anniversary theatrical event that was just screened in theater chains across the country, which included a re-recording of the voice lines of the first episode of the animated series, followed by an airing of the following 3 episodes. And since Nate and I both have nostalgia for much later generations of these characters, we decided to discuss some of our favorite incarnations for this podcasting special.
It's pretty wild how this happened because this podcast is just purely by chance. The story is I saw Transformers and I saw like the G1 just going on AMC site looking at movies to watch. I was like, oh, Transformers, 40 years. And I just clicked and booked my ticket because I just assumed, okay, it's Transformers in the movie theater. It's Transformers the movie from 1986. I didn't really realize that it wouldn't be a 4-year anniversary for that until 2 years from now. But I was like, hey, and then I walked in the theater and I was like, oh, this is not the movie. One bit.
Yeah, and I assumed the exact same thing because, like, yeah, it's a movie theater, Transformers the movie. Like, that's what I would expect when I see those G1 characters. Like, how was I supposed to know they were going to do something that I've never even heard of happening at a movie theater before? Like, yeah, we're going to take 4 episodes of an 80s cartoon, pair it with a bunch of commercials, and re-record a bunch of voice lines. Like, okay, I didn't think they were inventing a new type of commercial entertainment here. I just figured it was just the movie that's, like, I would love to see in the theaters.
Yeah, I was just caught off guard. But, you know, I was there. I'm like, okay, it's... I was a whole bunch of crowd that grew up with the original Transformers, so it was a really exciting crowd of people reliving their childhood where I'm just, you know, oh, this is pretty neat.
Like, I took my girlfriend who was around for G1 when it came on TV, and like, I think that really increased my enjoyment because, like, I came out, I'm like, well, that took a while. I liked the first episode. The following ones didn't need to see in a theater as much, but she was blown away because, like, these were memories from before she could talk. It was a core memory moment for her.
Yeah, I think the best part of that, because it was so authentic, it ended with a PSA. Because from our generation, you know, Cartoons Ben got rid of the PSA of like, oh, I think it was like Bumblebee saying like, yeah, don't run away, go back home, and that's how it just ended. No credits, nothing.
And I'm sorry, this was 1980s Reagan's America. We had a lot different parenting standards. Like, he does not know what that kid was going through. He might have been making the right choice. We don't know.
That was the era of the 10 p.m. Do you know where your kid's at ads on the TV?
But when I got there, like, I asked the person sitting next to me, and then, like, we went to the comic book store afterwards, saw another person that had just been there, and everyone else seemed to know what this was going in. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm the asshole here for not researching this, but
yeah, for us, it'd probably be the Michael Bay. They didn't re-release the Michael Bay movies.
Yeah, like, I will say, like, as far as appealing to further reach of nostalgia, I did really appreciate that the opening, like, 20-30 minutes of this was dedicated to, like, the entire Transformers franchise as it's running now, like, showing, like, what the different toy lines are. It showed a bit of the ongoing animated series and
advertisement. I don't see that a lot in theaters.
Yeah, like, in other situations, I might be mad. I'm like, You just showed me a commercial in theaters. Screw you. But
A lot of commercials.
you earn a lot of points for me if you advertise comic books based on the thing you're doing. Like, I've seen 20 some Marvel movies now, and not a single one has shown a single frame of comic book other than in that logo. And I was real grateful for them doing something about that here.
Yeah.
I also really enjoyed the trailer for the new animated Transformers movie coming out, I think later this year.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, yeah. I forgot the name escapes me. But it's what it's like a prequel on
y-
Cybertron.
yeah, I think. Oh yeah, Transformers One, I think it's
Yeah,
called.
that's the name.
Yeah, and like I'm really excited for that. Like it kind of reminds me of the same vibes of the most recent Ninja Turtles movie, and I really enjoyed that. And like even though it's clearly aiming towards like a bit of a younger audience, and maybe I'll hate the actual movie outside the trailer, like I'm just glad that this is something with Transformers I haven't seen before. I've never seen like how Optimus met Megatron, or at least like focusing on this, and it looks like they're doing something new and fun that isn't just like rehashing the same exact origin story that basically got retold all four versions of the show we're covering
Yeah.
today.
Yeah, apparently it takes a lot from the IDW run with like Megatron being like a minor and stuff like that. So it should be interesting that they're drawing from other stuff than Michael Bay or G1.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be interesting to see.
Now, as for what versions of the Transformers we're covering today, we're going to start out, of course, with the animated series from the 80s that we saw in theaters, followed by the Marvel Transformers comic, the first four issues of that, then Transformers Animated from 2007, and we're going to cap off with the most recent comic run with the Transformers comics from Image and Skybound, written by Daniel Warren Johnson.
Yeah, a couple honorable mentions. IDW run. It was hard to pick that one, but I wanted to have like an equal balance of comics and cartoons. So IDW got cut for Skybound, and I picked Transformer Animated because it was a hard choice between Animated, Beast Wars, and Prime, and Armada. And
Hmm.
Armada, a little too anime. It's a little, a little. They went a little out there with the concept. Beast Wars, I love the death. I think it's the best Transformers cartoon, but for this, viewing kind of similar stuff, it doesn't really fit.
Hmm.
Got animals, and that's like that's pretty much that's a sequel to G1.
Hmm.
Spoilers for season 2 of a 30-year show. And Prime, I think it was either down the Prime or Animated, and Prime I picked Animated over Prime because Animated was like the last Transformer cartoon that was in development before the movies became Transformers, the
Hmm.
IP for like the next 15 years afterwards. So it's like, okay, that's like the last cartoon where you can directly link the G1 compared to Prime, where it takes a lot more influence from the Michael Bay universe. I think Animated just only has a reference to just a name only. You can we can go more in depth, but you can replace the Allspark with the Matrix leadership, and it's pretty much the same
Hmm.
narratively.
I'm glad you picked Transformers Animated just because that, like, I never saw any of that growing up. Like, I mean, I had a renewed Transformers interest because I was in like seventh grade when that first movie came out, and I freaking loved it. But yeah, I was in that age where I felt weird about watching cartoons. So like I just never got a chance to see it. But like Transformers Armada, Transformers, the one from right before that, like Robots in Disguise.
Yeah, Robots in Disguise.
Like
That's a weird one.
those were the ones I really grew up with. Like I had like every single freaking mini con, and that was my Optimus from Transformers Armada. But yeah, I know those. I'm glad they went a very different direction with those, so we got to grow up with something a bit more original. But yeah, I'm glad I got to dive into the one I missed that I know a lot of people are nostalgic for.
Yeah, and rest of peace, the Jerry J. Wyatt. Actually didn't watch Transform Animated until like years later because I'm a big Jerry J. Wyatt fan. He was the art director for Ben 10 Omniverse and Scooby Doo Mystery Incorporated. He did character designs for that as well, and was a producer. And he passed away like 2 years ago. But yeah, his designs are iconic. You can tell by the chins.
Yeah, and bringing this back to the original series, while this was a really new concept to me, like bringing the original cast together and like showing side by side the cast reading the voice lines with the original animation, I was curious how you felt rewatching all of these episodes in the theater. Like the first one, cool experience. I loved the framing device of like literally using the footage of the actors and then like some extra graphics to make the small TV dimensions look okay on a theater screen. But it was weird to me to see 3 episodes of like 80s animated cartoon for the next like hour. And like, don't get me wrong, I think those are pretty good for their time, but it was a slog to get through for me.
It was. I actually haven't seen any of those original 4 episodes. I think the most I have seen of like I have seen random episodes of G1 Transformers late at night. I think it used to be play on a channel. It's like the Hasbro Network.
Hmm.
I forgot the name of it.
Like Discovery or the Hub or something.
Yeah,
like
it was
that.
called the Hub. I knew it was a lot of shit. That's all the bronies from back in 10 years ago. It was that channel. So I seen like a lot of like just random episodes of like G1. I have a couple uncles that's really like G1, but I haven't actually seen those first 4 episodes. I even know one of my favorite like all time like Optimus Prime clips. I even know came from one of those episodes. It was the hard. It's a hard difference between being a memory.
Yeah, there's a fine line between being a hero and being a memory.
Yes, I was like, whoa. I didn't know that's I didn't know the source of that.
Like I recently had to have a difficult conversation with my own father and like burying the hatchet. And I didn't tell him that a giant talking robot said that, but I did totally quote that line since like he's literally living in a war zone. Details for off air, but yeah, I'm like, hey, let's maybe not. Like a great hero once said, "There's a fine line between being a hero and being a memory," and I think we might be on the wrong side on this one.
But like watching the episodes, I mean, I was pretty entertained. I'm more entertained than like a lot of 80s cartoons I've seen. I've seen like episodes of Thundercats, which is pretty awful. I'm not gonna lie. But I don't know. I think the selling part of the G1 cartoon is really the voice actors. Honestly, like every Transformer just have so much personality in their voice. And I've been doing a lot of like casting for voice actors recently, and like, oh, I can really like every Transformer sound different. That's very impressive.
Yeah, and like I had no idea that Peter Cullen did Ironhide as well, and then like everyone else, for the most part, everyone was doing like upwards of 4 characters, and like you would never notice if they weren't showing these folks.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, some of the plots were like the first 2 episodes, the plots were like, okay, I kind of get it. That I mean, I think it was the last one where it's like, okay, yeah, this is going off the rails now. I think that was like it was like one scene. It was like they caused like some type of like tsunami or something. It was like, okay, we're gonna make a. It was like we're gonna make a dam. I was like, okay, this is getting wild. But it was pretty interesting to see like these characters at their earliest conception. I think the most interesting part is seeing how Optimus Prime develops throughout the years. Because I think this G1 cartoon Optimus is really like peak Robo Dad compared to every Optimus. Like he's like stern. He has a little bit of a temper. He's not like Superman. He's not like Superman or nothing. Like he seems like Captain America, like but not like MCU Captain America. Like older Captain America. Like okay, I'm the leader. I'm stern, but I also can give good advice. But I'm still a human. Well, robot, but I'm still like. I still have flaws.
Like responsibility and caring for those weaker than you like is his whole vibe, and that's like a peak dad material right there. And I think it's so funny that like Peter Cullen did this and like so many Optimuses, and we have like this peak Robo Dad here. Fast forward 25 years and we're in the Michael Bay movies and the same exact voice is saying, "I'll rip your face off, Megatron." Like,
yeah, he said, and Peter Cullen was like, "Yeah, I don't think this is Optimus Prime character." And Michael Bay was like, say the lines. Just say the lines. I mean, he had to get cast. The crazy part about that, he had to get casted for that.
Oh, it wasn't just a like, oh yeah, we got to get him. Like he had to actually try out.
Yeah, he had to try out. He had to try out like the rest of the voice actors who wanted to be Optimus.
Dang, I would love to know who else was in the running for that.
Yeah, we got spared. But yeah, it's a lot of interesting like I like it's a lot of franchises where like they have generation ones. There's a lot of Gen 1 isms. Pokemon has a lot of this. Like if you watch like the Pokemon anime before like really before it was like a real series Bible of like, okay, these are how this world operates. Because I think the most like wild part of watching the episode was like, oh, these guys can just freaking fly.
Yeah.
Everyone can just fly.
Yeah, like I don't really know the purpose of transforming in this. Like, I guess it's good for tackling people, which they do a lot. And yeah, that is pretty cool when they do the transform, but they kind of undercut the coolest part of the robots when they can also just fly wherever they need to be.
Well, yeah, it's just like, and it's so low budget flying too.
Hmm.
It's like JPEG flying. Like we just move the JPEG and keep going.
Yeah, well, I wish we could say that that's evolved, but like I've seen Invincible and we're still just moving JPEGs.
Yeah, it's crazy too because like this only happens in the cartoon. Because like I know when we go to the comic, like the comics, they actually like only the Decepticons can fly in their alt modes, but no, these guys are just soaring. And I'm very curious. I want to watch some more G1 cartoon just to find out what's the point where it's like everyone loses the ability to fly. Because I know it's like an early episode thing from the clips I've seen, so it's pretty fascinating. It's just Gen 1 isms.
Now, on those things, like it was a little weird in the theater seeing the like we'll be back after these messages thing every like 7 or 8 minutes. And since the first like 20 or so minutes of this had been commercials or like little bits about Transformers, how would you have felt if they had cut away for like a minute to like intersperse those with the show? Like, do you think that would have been the wrong choice, or would it make it feel a little more natural to like what this was like watching it on TV?
Yeah, they should have just went all out. They have the rights to those like old commercials. They should just play the old commercials.
Oh yeah, that would have been way better if we got to see the original toy commercials.
Yeah, that'd be like peak immersion into them.
What I thought was really cruel though was every episode they like do the we'll be back after these messages at the end, and then it comes back and it's just the credits. They made these kids wait through an entire commercial break just to watch credits. That's so unfair.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that's totally true. Be back for the credits. But it was it's a couple other things that I felt kind of interesting about these episodes. Cliff Jumper had a big role in it.
Mm-hmm.
The most I know from Cliff Jumper is before this was Transformer Prime, and he died in the first. It's not even a spoiler. He died in like the first minute of episode 1.
Oh wow.
So he just dies. So I didn't really know much about Cliff Jumper, but I was like, oh man, I wonder. It's kind of like a Pokemon situation because Pokemon started out like it was a Pokemon named Clefairy was going to be the mascot before it was Pikachu, and I'm like, it's like a really good reality here where it could have been Cliff Jumper over Bumblebee as like the mascot, and I kind of wish we saw that instead because I really like Cliff Jumper. I mean, literally the same toy, just painted red.
Yeah, and like I think we're certainly seeing that in the Skybound series right now.
Yeah,
but like yeah, it's wild how little credit he's gotten over the years, and it's for one thing weird that like with all the weird legal issues they had with Bumblebee over the years that like they never just used Cliff Jumper instead. And on top of that, like Cliff Jumper never even showed up in any of the Michael Bay Transformers movies, to my knowledge.
Yeah, which is weird because he's like the original group of Transformers.
I don't know, maybe his name just isn't as cute. Maybe the car isn't like quite as cute. Like, I mean, even now they've kind of upped him from like a VW bug looking guy to like a Lamborghini in the modern comics. So that helps a bit.
It's weird. It's like he seems like pretty awesome. Like I'm comparing like the episode with Bumblebee compared to the one with Cliff Jumper, and Cliff Jumper had a better, more memorable personality than Bumblebee.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, what happened here? Is yellow just more popular?
Mm.
A yellow bug? Maybe that's why. It's just, a little more iconic.
Yeah. And I mean, when there's like 12 Autobots in the first episode, and most of them have some kind of clever like vehicle pun name, and then you've got the cute one called Bumblebee, like even like 5-year-old me renting old Transformers VHS tapes, like I knew Optimus Prime, I knew Megatron, and I knew Bumblebee. I could not have named a fourth Transformer though.
I mean, I could name like Jazz and Wheeljack and a couple.
Hmm.
It's a couple. It's a couple of them. I was like, who are you? It happened in both the cartoon and the comic because it's kind of interesting because they both focused on. I don't. It's probably not intentional, but they both focus on different Transformers between the first 4 issues of the comic and the first 4 episodes. Because I think the show focused more on like Cliff Jumper, Hound. I don't know who that Crane guy is. All he did was like lift up Mirage. I think after he tumbled. It was some good animation on that tumble of him crashing down the hill.
I felt like that was also really essential to like what playing with these toys is actually kind of be like. That's classic. Like you're driving him off the cliff and oh no, he fell. We need the others to pull him out of the hole. Like, yeah, that's exactly the kind of like Hot Wheels adventures I was having growing up.
Yeah, it's fascinating how different these two adaptations are from each other because they both came out during the same time. And they both written like I think in the credits it has Marvel Comics up there because they helped the Marvel editor. I forgot his name, escapes me at the time. But it's like one Marvel editor that came up with like the bios and synopsis of like all the Transformers.
Yeah, I feel bad for how much is escaping me right now because just like a month or two ago, I watched the Toys That Made Us episode on Transformers, and they get very into like what it was like to write these comics for Marvel and like how much those comics came up with like most of the concepts that stuck through this franchise or even made it into the TV show. It's wild how much like Marvel has its DNA in this, or like this at its heart was such a Marvel property and like that played such a strong role through it. Jim Shooter, that was the editor-in-chief.
Jim Shooter did it? Okay. Yeah, it was, I think he like all 32 of the original first wave, he came with the whole bios and everything, their names. Because fun fact, fun fact for everyone to know, like Transformers started off as just multiple different Japanese toy lines, and Hasbro got the rights to all of them, and he was like, okay, we're just gonna make one solidified, one brand, and that's why if you look at the toys, all the toys are like nothing to the scale of each other.
Yeah, like some of them are vehicles, others are small, like now tape recorders, a gun, and then one of them is just Robotech.
Yeah, one of them was like a cassette player.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think the Decepticons is more transparent, like you said, like, okay, we have a whole bunch of planes, then we have a gun, cassette player. At least with the Autobots is a little more consistent where they're all like cars and then a truck as the leader. Decepticons is like, okay, what are we doing here? Yeah. But like you look at the toys, you can really see like how like a lot of these are mixed and matched.
And didn't I know in the comics the designs are different. I don't know if they're closer to their original Japanese counterparts.
The comics are like just the toys, and we can talk about more. But like you like the original. I save it to when we talk about the comic. But the comics are literally just the toys.
And
then the cartoon had like the reasonable decision of like, let's make these things appealing, and that's why it's like totally different. Like we didn't. It's staying in the Transformer community. It took like years. So like the 2010s or something, where so you actually got like G1 versions of the cartoon characters as toys for the first time. It took that long because like those G1 toys look almost nothing like the cartoon. Like Ratchet and Ironhide do not have heads in the toys, and you can see that in the comic issues where it's like Ratchet and Ironhide do not have a head, then Ratchet gets a head in like issue number 3.
Okay, I wasn't sure if they were just like mid transformation the first time
I read
that.
That was their transformation. So imagine like you can look Avenged of it with like Ironhide and Ratchet original toys had no heads. They weren't like actual robots.
And I mean, I think I'm ready to full on move the discussion to the comics, unless you have any final notes on the animated series.
Oh, it's one funny thing. I could tell as a writer, it's like, okay, we got to start. We just got to keep saying these guys' names in their dialogue, no matter how unnatural it is to say their names.
Yeah, and again, I can't believe that like on both teams there are like upwards of 10 robots each. And they all do their little roll call, and like we see them transform all together, which cool shot, yes. And like I know action figure cartoons hadn't developed all of their staples by then, but it's still just weird to me they didn't think like, hey, let's maybe introduce these guys one at a time.
All at once.
Buy them all.
Yeah, it's you get the whole pack all at once, and it's a little more natural in the cartoon at least because it's not like one big scene. We trace over to the comics, but it's not one big scene where it's like, oh, I'm Cliff Jumper. No, they talk in first person in the comics.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I'm Cliff Jumper and I do so and so. At least in the cartoon, it's a little more natural. Like, oh, it's a little more natural in the cartoon.
Uh,
It's in comics.
but yeah, then moving to the comics like that, that's really where it started to lose me. Like I was excited to get into these because I guess I just figured maybe this would be more my speed since I'm a comics person. But yeah, like having two different scenes where every Autobot, then every Decepticon has to say their name and a little fun fact about themselves. Like it's like the slowest icebreaker in comics form. It was giving me college flashbacks, and I didn't like it.
Oh, it's actually crazy because it's literally it's long too. It's not like, okay, my name plus like a short sentence. It's like a whole paragraph
Mhm.
of what they are. And it's like, oh my god.
This is what
It's
I can do.
It's 13 of these. And they
Yeah.
don't do anything in these 4 issues. These are literally extras.
And I mean, I guess I get it more here because, like, you even see on the first 4 issues, it says, like, #1 in a 4 issue limited series. So if they're like, yeah, we need you to introduce these 30 robots in a 4 issue comic, it's to sell toys. You don't have to flesh them out. It's fine. Like, you can read between the lines there.
Yeah, it's really showcasing the difference in medium, honestly. G1 cartoon was literally like they have more time in a cartoon to flesh out characters.
Mhm.
Like we know we can give an episode to this character because that's what the cartoon did. To give like you probably pick like a handful of Transformers. We're gonna make them the focus of the episode. Well, the comic, you gotta do this month to month. So I mean, where comics on issue #1, we got 4 episodes of cartoon, so you got to kind of speed run the selling already. You got to we got toys to sell. So it's kind of fascinating of like how the comic handle the advertisements compared to the cartoon because they really picked focus issues on like one Transformer he was trying to sell, and the rest were pretty much extra. Like issue #1 was kind of like everybody. Issue #2 focused a little more on Bumblebee. Issue #3 was more on like Gears, which
And
is random.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider. I got thoughts on that, and like issue 4 focused on like Ratchet. So it's kind of interesting how both creative teams handle selling toys differently. And it's kind of a joke on that. They joke about that a lot. Like I think the last issue was like called like the longest running 4 issue miniseries. So they play with that idea a lot of like, oh, this was 4 issues
Mm.
that just was crazy popular.
Yeah, and I'm assuming they knew by issue 4 that like they were getting renewed since it almost ends just fine, and then there's like 1 or 2 extra pages that are like, oh, and then Shockwave shows up and he's gonna kill everybody. And
Yeah,
also
we
the
got
Dinobots are out there. Buy
yeah,
'em soon.
Dinobots are here. We got to sell Dinobots.
Which like I didn't like these first 4 comics, but just looking at the covers of the next one, especially issue 5 with Shockwave, and like it's like a metal album cover and it says all are dead on the wall. Like these first 4 issues did not make me want to read more, but that cover sure as hell does.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because I really like these cartoons that's meant to sell toys from a meta standpoint, and it really gets like because I really like the idea of like writing with constraints and with some like agenda and trying to make it work out. And the Marvel comics really have to. It's really pushed on like we have to sell toys every month. What toys Hasbro's going to give us now? Because it's pretty like if you compare the development of a comic book compared to cartoon. I don't know if you know this, but like the animated movie like Transformers the movie was in production before episode 1 of the G1 cartoon.
And I'd love to like pick apart what exactly that means. Like, I mean, I know it takes forever to make a animated movie, so I'm like really wondering like how much did they know? Like, was it already in the plans that like, okay, and then this movie we're gonna kill all the characters and take it in this direction?
You got to think about it from like not from like a creative standpoint. You got to look at it from like a toy standpoint. I think they probably have all the waves of toys planned out, and they knew okay, we're gonna have to find a way to sell new toys and get rid of like the old batch of toys. And this is before because there was a big controversy at the time about like, oh, kids were crying because you killed Robo Dad in the first 30 minutes and you killed all the Transformers, and it's kind of like it's not as malicious as you would think because they didn't know these characters would mean so much to people at first. So they like the movies are probably in development before like Transform became like this phenomenon. And it's like, oh, we already had this movie in development where we like clear house for like a new wave of toys, like wave 2. So it's like, oh.
And I think what makes that movie feel so unique is that like it's an action figure line like beefed up like with budget to go on the big screen, and like it's clearly there to sell toys, but it doesn't have like any fan service outside of like a good fight with Optimus. But otherwise, like if they did this now, if they try to do an animated G1 Transformers movie, it'd all be like focusing on your favorites and giving them a little moment. And this is like, nope, we're gonna kill them. Yeah, new characters, you know them, love them, please buy them. So like there's way less fan service here than there would be in any Marvel movie, and that's what makes it artistically stand out more, and like makes me excited to show it to people, because like even though there's plenty of action figure cartoons out there, nothing really hits the same way this one does.
Yeah, because Transformer came out before like the big boom of like, okay, we know this system of like, because stuff before like He-Man and stuff, but it's before like we got the idea of like keep making like the same action figure over and over. And you got to think about the time Transformers weren't making these toys, so it was like, okay, we got these line of new Japanese toys that we want to sell instead of like just keep making Optimus Primes, because I mean, if people who think like take it back to the comics, like you think the movie's bad. I mean, they did the same. It was the death count in the comics is crazy too, because the comics went on longer than the cartoon. So they had more toys to sell, all these different gimmicks, and it just kept on going. They cleared out a house, and it's not intentional. Like, I don't think it was like, okay, this is the type of story I want to tell from a writing perspective, but it really hammer in like this is a war compared to other 80s cartoons, even G.I. Joe to a sense, where it's like, oh, like this might be for children, but they're robots, so you can kill these characters off and like keep on going. And I think that make the war story a little more impactful. Because like even Optimus Prime dies in like issue number 30, and he doesn't appear till like 70 something. So it's like it's real stakes.
I think really both this and the G.I. Joe comics needed a little while to get past that initial like sell these toys, get people excited about the cartoon. And like I haven't read the earliest G.I. Joe comics, but like I've met maybe the biggest G.I. Joe fan in my state, and even he's like, yeah, the like first 10 to 20 pretty rough, but after that, like I love the ones I've read around like issues 40 to 50, and obviously they're good enough they keep bringing Larry Hama back even like now with the Skybound run. So it's really cool seeing what like writers already were ready to do with these characters, and like taking these stories farther in like a medium that gave them a little more leeway, and that parents might not have been monitoring as much, or like the FCC wasn't monitoring as much as the animated TV shows.
Yeah. I mean, the Comic Code Authority just saw robots and like, okay, it's fine.
When the AI rises up, I feel like we're really going to regret that. Like when they start to see like, oh, robot lives don't matter. They're like less than Nazis. You can kill them and it's fine. We'll put it in a kid's cartoon. Like I don't want to have that conversation with ChatGPT when it gets sentience.
But yeah, it's this comic was a little fascinating, especially reading after the cartoon. I think it's like this leans a little more into I'd say this leans less in the war, because this war is still there, but it's more of like more space epic war. It's like alien, like Transformers a little more alien. We have a whole exposition at the start of like how Transformer society works, and I mean the war was so bad that the freaking orbit, the planet was moving. That was crazy detail. I told multiple times where I read like Silver Age comics and like Golden Age comics, I don't read the exposition boxes, because a lot of times, especially like Marvel, that's it's really not needed. It's like Stanley just saying like a whole bunch of adjectives, but like for this comic, I had to read this stuff. I had to read all the boxes. There was a lot of important exposition in there.
Like by issue 2 or 3, you're kind of fine, but yeah, like a lot of cool world building is in those boxes in issue 1.
And it's like written. It's not even written like poetically, like I mean, I'm not expecting Chris Claremont X-Men or like Marv Wolfman Teen Titans, but it'd be like, oh yeah, this was just rocking awesome that this happened. And it's like This is written for children.
Yeah.
You gotta make the space epic written for children. But yeah, it was pretty. They focus a lot more on like the lore in this being more
Hmm.
space epic. Because I think the G1 cartoon just started off with like just on Cybertron, but it wasn't really. We didn't get any lore.
Yeah, and the seeds they plant in it though, like I am impressed. Like I'm trying to remember, was it in the comic that like Megatron is already set and like trying to turn Cybertron into like one giant transformer, like one giant war machine?
I don't remember. All I remember like Megatron is just so pure evil. And it's kind of refreshing to see like these evil characters these days because we're in an era like sympathetic backstories and we're going back to like the pure villains for no
Hmm.
reason than be evil.
I love the different dynamics. I mean, we got characters like Ravage that don't talk in the cartoon, but like have a lot to say here.
Yeah, because sets
Or
are awesome here.
Starscream is like all about like, hey, I'm gonna betray you someday in the
It's more low
cartoon. Like
key. It's
that's
low key in the comic.
his conversations are always that. In here, it's more like Megatron is just very passive aggressive in his thoughts about Starscream. Like he'll be snide, but then he's thinking like, "You son of a bitch, I know what you're up to." Like Starscream's getting to him.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, you think I've been like the leader of Decepticons for a century and followed by assassins and not know who I'm dealing with?" It's like I like this dynamic's a lot more interesting, and I think that's kind of like my thoughts of the whole of the comics. I think the comics are a lot more interesting if I'm just looking at like, all right, I'm putting my literary analysis hat on. It's a lot more depth in these comics than the cartoon, but the cartoon is a lot more entertaining,
Hmm.
especially because of the voice acting. Like
Yeah.
Starscream and Starscream and Megatron dynamic, it's a lot more fleshed out and more interesting in the comic. But just hearing those voice actors go back and forth in the cartoon is it's just so amazing.
Oh yeah, and the at the end of I think the first episode they showed the bloopers of like the voice actors trying to make each other laugh but staying in the character voice. Like I'm so sad they didn't do a Pixar and like animate those because like there would have been meme gold right there.
It's a lot of fascinating stuff. I think one thing I take Buster over Spike any day if we're comparing the two.
Mm,
Buster's a lot more interesting, and the whole like dynamic between like humans and the Autobots a lot more interesting in the comic because like Buster's a little more, he's a lot more relatable than like Spike. Spike's just a good old kid. I mean,
yeah.
it was kind of funny. He was getting his ass beat by Transformers in the cartoon. That was pretty funny.
Oh
He
yeah.
like
What
he punched one of the cassettes. He just got kicked in the gut, thrown down.
running away from the Decepticons and there's Bumblebee in car mode not stopping to pick him up. Like what what do you think was going to happen here? Actually, you know what? I shouldn't expect the Autobots to know the top speed of a running human. And maybe they all think they can run like 60 to 80 miles an hour.
Yeah, yeah, and it was pretty fascinating to see just I like the idea. I just like the whole human aspects a little more in the comics, especially with Buster Dad being a mechanic. That's just good writing right there. I like that
Perfect.
compared to just being on like oil rig. And why Spike there?
Oh yeah.
The kid, he's a kid there. He's not like 19, 20. Like he's a kid just on the oil rig.
On those relationship elements, like we mentioned the cassettes briefly and how like, oh yeah, they talk in the comic, their dynamics a little different. And I want to know, since you've read more of the IDW comics and know a little bit more, has anything ever really dived into the relationship of Soundwave and their cassette tapes? Because like Soundwave's kind of their mom, or like holds that role, and I want to know like why these guys just transform into little boxes that go inside Mama Soundwave.
I actually haven't read that much of the IDW run, so I can't say. I just know little bits and lore pieces, but I haven't had to sit down and read all of them, so I'm not sure. But it's pretty fascinating, honestly, how like the cassettes in the Marvel comics are more of a focus in Soundwave, and then the cartoon, the cassettes are just like Pokemon. That's how they shoot out. It's like I think the dynamics are a lot more like weird in the comics.
Yeah, and like I think the cartoon probably made the right choice, like having the dog and the bird like be non-verbal, Whereas here it's like, oh, dude, we just got this dog that has a lot to say, or he's like
Yeah, I mean,
number
Laserbeak's
3.
become the leader of the Decepticons for a little bit in the
What?
comics. So yeah, they're like important. It's weird. I like it though. I don't know. I was really intrigued by Ravage because I think the one thing with like the comic, I think this G1 comic really plays with the idea of robots in disguise a little more than the cartoon. It's kind of weird too because like robot in disguise is kind of like how Pokemon's like gotta catch them all, but Ash doesn't catch all the Pokemon. Robots in disguise in all these mediums we saw, they're not really trying to hide.
Mm-hmm.
Like they
Yeah.
just yeah, we're Transformers. Like in I mean the G1 cartoon, I mean people just know about them by episode like 3. Like, oh, thank you guys. Thank you, robots, for helping us. Like it's not really like a thing to be hidden from plain sight in car mode or anything. It's just but like when the at least with the cassettes, they actually play with the size changing and how like Ravage would just like do espionage and turn to a like tiny cassette and hide and stuff like that. That's interesting.
Love to see like what if like Ravage's personality changes when that happens, because they're like that tape stuff is inside of him and it's changing.
Yeah.
Like, is this changing him at his core now that there's like different stuff getting written to the electrical cassette tape?
I never thought about that, but you're probably right. It's so cool too because like we're never gonna get like these type of out of all the Transformers, Soundwave tapes are kind of like a loss. One of the only major losses due to technology advancement is Soundwave, and especially cassettes because you can't really do that as an alt mode anymore in the modern era.
Yeah, like while Soundwave is a major focus of the Skybound comics and he's awesome, I don't think we've seen him transform because like why would these Transformers in the year of our Lord 2024 like why would one of them be a cassette player? None of these vehicles would have a like tape deck in it.
I had that in my notes. They just killed off Ravage in like the first couple like issue. I think it's issue number 2. Like Ravage just gets shot, it dies.
Yeah.
So we never even get the idea of like a modernization of Ravage because they don't. I don't think he has any cassettes. They just die because it's like Soundwave's best design is that cassette player, you know, G1 version. But like you can have that design, and in modern version they make them like so many different things, like a satellite or a Cybertruck or different things. But like the cassettes never really translate. It just doesn't, like you can't even really do like a flash drive anymore due to like the people using cloud. So it's like I really, and it wouldn't look the right, like a flash drive turned into a tiger. I don't know. It's something lost in the advancement of technology. Soundwave power set.
Really, that whole relationship between him and his cassettes, like I don't know if anyone's explored that. I really want to see like anyone dive into what it's like to be Devastator or any of the combiners of like.
Oh yeah, that gets tackled in IDW. That's trippy.
Okay, good. That alone might make me read them, but I also might need to avoid that because that's something I want to play with and when we transform, and I don't want to steal too liberally from anything.
Yeah, it's a lot of lore when it comes to combiners and how they operate, and sometimes they're like become like new beings. Sometimes it's like one headmaster. I know they tackle that for sure in like IDW because it's like one arc where like Optimus coming like a combiner and he gets like Bumblebee, Wheeljack, Ironhide, and they become like one. And one of the worst Transformer comics of all time, like it's really bad. It's when the Dinobots become combiners.
Dang.
And that's infamous. But yeah, it's a lot of interesting stuff there.
So like, did Optimus and like the OG Autobots have like a polycule going on when they all combined into one, or is it all just is Optimus the Dom?
I'm pretty sure Optimus is the Dom. I'm pretty sure it's like the rest of them like mentally in there, but they're not. They're like the backseat. But I'm not sure though. That's like deep in like the IDW run because IDW original universe went for I think 2006 to 2019 before the universe got rebooted. So it's like a lot of material. And that's one thing I want to point out. I'm more of a Transformer fan when they're on Earth. That's just my personal preference. I like, urban sci-fi, urban fantasy more than high sci-fi. So like a lot of Transformer media lose me when we get off Earth and go Cybertron politics. And that's when a lot of IDW stuff tackles in Cybertron more than Earth. But it's something really fascinating because I really one thing I appreciated both in the cartoon and the comics that the human element here. I really think as a writer and writing, you really need, especially at the start of a series like this, you really just need humans to ground the series a little more. And that's
Mhm.
why I kind of like Buster, because he really grounds the series.
Yeah, and they're doing well with that in Skybound as well. Just like the human element and like seeing actual human cost to things is really cool, and we'll get into that later. But like, I think kind of what you're getting at is like when the Transformers are on Earth, it kind of walks the line of almost being like a superhero comic of sorts. And some incarnations even treat them a lot more like
Yeah.
superheroes. And then once you start taking them off world, then it veers into space opera and like all of a sudden the transforming element kind of like becomes irrelevant or is just like a
Yeah, it
little bit of set dressing.
doesn't make sense for you to be like uh, a truck on Cybertron, like a human truck. Because like we kind of see that in like the cartoon and the comic of like Cybertron modes.
Yeah, and at least in the comic of Marvel's comic, Optimus seems to be more of like a tank or a war machine on Cybertron, and I liked that. But and everything else, he's just like a more futuristic looking truck.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan, but yeah, one thing is good to bring up that like early day Marvel licensed comic compared to nowadays, you get a license, we're gonna make its own separate universe, we're gonna do our own thing. Marvel back in the day, we're like, okay, we got the license. It's Marvel.
Mm.
We don't care. We're not gonna have the rights to this or how it's gonna affect the universe. Pretty much every licensed toy product or even food, like Combo Man, anybody know that reference? Where like canon to Marvel canon. So Transformers, Rom the Space Knight,
G.I. Joe.
Godzilla,
Yeah,
all were Marvel.
Godzilla gets a mention in this. Like Nick Fury pops up and he's like, well, at least they're not Godzilla.
And due to Marvel never being rebooted, like these are all technically, Transformers being in Marvel canon is technically still canon, especially because of ROM. They're not legally allowed to use a ROM. Anybody knows that toy. They're not legally allowed to use ROM, but it was a whole Venom run called Venom and the Space Knights because Marvel created all of ROM's supporting cast, and they own that. Anything Marvel creates for the series, they own.
Hmm.
It's just like Optimus and stuff. So like, yeah, Transformers are canon into the Marvel universe.
Yeah,
It's weird how they would do that.
going through these comics has been kind of a swan song for me. Like I inherited these from someone and I'm getting ready to sell them to like put those funds into developing my own comic. And it's fun going through that collection and seeing how far reaching this was. Like they had some issues of Death's Head 2, which I know is like a Marvel character introduced via Transformers.
Yeah,
Now they're
legally, in the re-releases, the Hasbro gave Marvel gave them the rights to re-release Hasbro and other like IDW to release it. But it's certain issues, like issue number 3, Deathlock issues. There was a woman who got electricity powers that became I think her Over Circuit or something. She was an
Circuit
antagonist.
Breaker, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In the re-release for the IDW re-releases, like the G1 comics, those pages, those comics where the comics supposed to be at, they're just summary pages of what happens in there because they're legally not allowed to put those characters in the re-release. And I think the most wildest part about like, and then we can go and talk about like Spider-Man inclusion, but this isn't like some Marvel stop because they just had to deal with this last year because they put Conan in the Marvel comics and he had some series. He was a part of a spin-off Avengers team, and Marvel lost the rights.
Yeah, within like 2-3 years, and they launched like 6 or 7 series featuring Conan.
And so those are legal loopholes now. Like, so it's not like, oh, this is just like a thing that happened. Like they still deal with the consequences of putting your license and things you don't own into universe.
Like I do like it as set dressing, and I mean, I feel like the Marvel universe in a way was still pretty new in the 80s. Like that was really where they started actually having like a lot of books cross over. This would have been, I think, even right before Secret Wars, if my timeline's
Yeah.
right. So like, yeah, I know they all technically have existed in the same world since like Fantastic Four issue 1. But it's really only around here that I think people start to play with that sandbox a lot. So like I can see them not like having that foresight of like how this would impact things down the line, since they're still like kind of pioneering how this is gonna look like having more than just comics that take place in the same world, but actually having things that like actually impact each other's books.
Yeah, because I've been reading a lot of Silver Age stuff, and it's more like, okay, Marvel Universe compared to the DC Universe, because DC were more like everything was kind of separated. Marvel was like kind of made by similar like minded folks, so it was all in like a similar universe. But we're getting to the phase in Marvel history where it's less big event for crossovers to happen. That makes sense outside of cameos. It's like it was a certain point in comic book history where it was like, oh, you just have characters pop up without having like, oh, this is a Flash Batman crossover. Barry can just show up. So it was pretty interesting because it was kind of like I'm reading Amazing Spider-Man. It's a lot of stuff like how we see a Transformer where it's just cameos, just minor cameos of characters appearing. Like Nick Fury just appears.
Yeah, one panel, name drops Godzilla, and then
Which is weird he name drop Godzilla because modern day Toei is not allowing that.
yeah. This was in the era that they were even letting Hanna-Barbera do whatever they wanted to that franchise. So,
but yeah, that Spider-Man crossover, it gets so big of like, oh yeah, Spider-Man was in Transformers, but crossover, I don't know about you, but that crossover is pretty lackluster.
yeah, and so weird they focus on what was it?
Gears.
Like, yeah, like no one's favorite Transformer. I'm like, guys, you got Spider-Man. Why is he not doing a lot with Optimus, or at least like Bumblebee or one of the cool ones?
Yeah, I guess it makes sense from like what we talked about before. Like this was before they knew, especially probably because when he was made, maybe before it launched issue #1. I'm not sure, but it's like, oh, we just spotlight a random toy. So before Optimus Prime and Bumblebee were like cool. So it's just like maybe they thought Gears could be cool.
I mean, Gears is a basic bitch Autobot. Like, there's designs that stand out even among those original. Like, they could have took a better guess there just with that lineup.
Yeah, I think the most interesting part about like this crossover because it's like set place in modern day Marvel too. Because like if you do like a crossover now, you probably get rid of like even if Spider-Man has a new costume or something, you probably just make it normal suit costume. But this just fits right in. He has the black suit. And
Oh,
make a
yeah.
reference to like, oh, this black suit makes it easy to transform. Changing my costume, and it's like, oh, that's pretty neat. But crossover itself is like, oh, Spider-Man is randomly. I don't even know what state they're in. They're not in New York. They're in some random state.
Oregon, I
And
think.
you're like in Oregon, and the Daily Bugle. Actually, after reading some Spider-Man, they did send Peter a lot of places, so I take that back. But it's just Peter's here, Peter's helps, Peter leaves. And it's like, wow, this is like the big fun fact.
Yeah, which really playing fast and loose with that whole secret identity. Like, what do you know? Will you send Peter Parker to Oregon? Spider-Man shows up in Oregon? Like, for a newspaper that only talks about this one guy, you're really not reading between the lines.
Yeah, I can't even get mad at that because that's literally the plot of like issue #10 of Spider-Man with the lizard. Like the lizards in like Florida, they send Peter to Florida to take pictures of the lizard. Spider-Man appears, he takes pictures of himself with the lizard. No one thinks so. That's just classic Spider-Man right there.
It does fit better with modern news media, though. Now, hey, we're not here to solve any problems. We're not here to like get to the bottom of this case. The longer we stretch this out, like, if we figure out who Spider-Man is, that's the last newspaper we sell. Like, yeah, that'll be big, but milking this,
describing that issue of the lizard, like, oh, you think I care about what happens to the lizard? How does Spider-Man cause this? How is Spider-Man fault? We don't care about the fact. How is Spider-Man? That's the first, every James Jones appearance in Spider-Man. But back to Transformers, I'm a little disappointed. The most funny part about this is some like re-release. They just color Spider-Man in fully black. It is super easy because he has the black suit. So you just remove like the little white in his costume.
I think they should have made him into Snake Eyes. Like, not that too far. Maybe Snake Eyes has a grappling hook or some rope.
It's cool though because I do like the idea of Transformer being into a interconnected universe. I think it fits with Transformer lore to have Transformers with other like characters and IPs. And they tried out IDW a little bit with like, Transformer and G.I. Joe always been connected. And I think it's in development right now for 2026, a G.I. Joe Transformers movie. But I'm really surprised that Hasbro has a whole superhero franchise with robots, and they own for about the past 5 years now. And we still haven't had a Transformer Power Rangers crossover. It's very surprising.
I hope they get to that sooner rather than later, because like that, I feel like that's the most no-brainer crossover. But instead, they're still like, oh, let's work with other companies. Let's put them in with Godzilla and the Ninja
Yeah, it's
Turtles.
just weird because it's like you don't have to pay money for this or do any contracts. You literally own both IPs outright. So it's like, okay, I can really see like cinematic universe train has kind of gone and went. But it's you could make a interesting lineup of Power Rangers, GI Joe, Transformers, and I think it could work.
I wonder if like the recent transition of Transformers from IDW to Image might have something to do with this. Like, I don't think Boom and Image would be against working together, but I think because like Image is trying to set something up very new with the Transformers brand and like just has the one Transformers comic and then appearances in Void Rivals and the G.I. Joe line. They might not be ready to have that like, okay, here's other Transformers comics, but they don't take place in the same world as our Transformers comics. I mean, comic readers will get it, but
It
like they're probably just being extra protective right now.
it could be, but they could do something similar to how Power Rangers crossover TMNT because TMNT Power Ranger crossover is not like Power Rangers crossing over with the IDW TMNT. It's like a modernized version of the '80s show. Those TMNT are based on. So they probably do something similar with Power Rangers would crossover transform, just make them G1.
Yeah, well, you know what? We're gonna monkey's paw make this happen, but it's gonna be the 2017 movie Power Rangers with the Michael Bay
Oh my
Transformers.
god! I mean, that's interesting. I'm not even gonna. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that actually does lend itself to cool stories. Like, I wouldn't be mad about that. I'd just be mad it's not the designs I want to see.
Yeah, and let's finish up here. I think the only other crossover appearance of like random fact is like, oh, the Donald. Wouldn't they say like the Dinobots are in the Savage Lands, or it was
Yeah,
something about the Savage Lands, but it didn't. It felt so like unneeded because like they didn't get their powers from the Savage Lands. Like they got their powers from just regular dinosaurs, and they're just in the Savage Lands.
I would get it if this was something that happened like in the modern day, but they're like, oh yeah, in that 5 million years we were covered in this volcano. A drone went out, passed all the dinosaurs in the neighborhood, went to Antarctica and saw those dinosaurs.
Yeah, that was
And
the weird part. It's still dinosaurs. Like, and I don't know why he went all the way over there. It's this weird lore building to tie in Savage Lands.
yeah, like you really think Kazar is at the top of the list of Marvel characters I want to see show up in this?
Another thing, because I want to describe what I thought of every Optimus Prime. This Optimus Prime in this one is just military
Mm.
general. He doesn't have the Robo Dad or like the thing. Like he's just a really good general.
Yeah, it seems like if am I remembering correctly, he still has like some of that responsibility sense of like we brought this war here, so it is on us.
Yeah, he still has it, and it's this Optimus Prime might be a little more noble. It's just not as shown more because like Optimus Prime dies as mentioned before in like issue number 30, but he dies because Megatron challenged him to like a battle, and Buster put both of their consciousnesses in a floppy disk into a video game, and what happens is Optimus wins the battle with Megatron, but NPCs of the game dies as a result, so he just suicides.
Yeah, because I would get it to a robot that an electronic NPC life would seem like the same as all of his buds. But yeah, still though,
Yes.
to be a military general and like a little collateral damage like makes him into like you lost your planet. Like I
Yeah, he
thought you were
blows up.
used to this.
It's crazy too. He just like blows up, and he's gone for like 30 issues after that. So he's still there, but it's just like the medium of comic books. You just don't have time to really focus on that in these issues. It happens more later on.
Yeah, I had a lot more to say about these comics I didn't like than I thought I would, but let's move
It's
this.
crazy because these are bad. These are a bad. I wouldn't say bad issue. These are just like I don't know. You can 4 issues is not a lot to tell a story, and then you also got to account for this being like you have to market a lot of toys, and then you always got to account into randomly having to set up more content last minute because like the next arc is like Shockwave just terrorizing both Decepticons and Autobots, and it's like this is only like the start of the content because it's really like it's a lot of cool content in this comic that just isn't really explored a lot just because it's not anywhere else. I wish it would just be like an audiobook one day, or maybe like a audio drama adaptation that Hasbro commissions to just explore this content, because it's so weird
Mm.
compared to other Transformer lore, because it's like it doesn't take from it's like two branching paths of the same source material of the little toy bios and stuff. You have the G1 cartoon, and then you have like the comics, and they both pretty much had no relation to each other. Like Grimlock becomes the leader, and Grimlock becomes like is pretty competent compared to like cartoon Grimlock is just stupid. So it's a lot of interesting stuff there. It's worth checking out if you're a Transformers fan.
But yeah, moving good 20 some years in the future to Transformers Animated from 2007. I gotta say, this was like, I think the most mixed bag thing that I consumed for this episode. Like, I really loved the world they set up with the Autobots and Decepticons, and like making Optimus Prime like kind of the rookie and experienced leader in this. But once they get to Earth, there's a lot about this show that I do not care for.
Okay. What's up?
So like, I don't know if it's just that the animation in this lends itself well to the robots, but not to people. But like, I was fully on board in episode 1. I'm like, okay, the character designs I'm a little weird about, but the Decepticons all look really cool, so I'll allow it. But once they land on Earth and we meet the main like little girl, Sari, and her grandpa or whatever, like
Her dad.
the animation jumps in like it's like this PBS Kids looking ass TV show for the last 5 minutes. And at first I thought like, oh, did all the budget go in the first 15 minutes and then we have to kill 5 minutes at the end with these crappy looking characters? But no, that's just kind of how the show is. Like, I know Kids WB wasn't like the #1 of these channels, but like the animation on the humans just looks weird and off-putting, and like it really takes me out of what's otherwise a pretty solid retelling of the Transformers lore.
Yeah, it's weird. Cause I would even call it a retelling, honestly. It's like a modern day like midquel, pretty much, because it's like what we get from the start of the show, that like a version of G1 happened. It's just Optimus wasn't there.
Right, yeah, it's like propaganda films that they're watching early on. That was a really fun touch.
Yeah, so they actually showed like G1 footage and random footage of Cybertron stuff. So that's pretty interesting. So like, yeah, because like the war of G1, that's pretty much like World War II, good guy versus bad guy. But this war actually takes more inspiration from like the Cold War. Like, okay, we already won, but like it can, something go down at any moment with the bad guys. So that's pretty interesting. It's a different reimagining. And one thing, real reason I brought this up, because it's like the first Transformer adaptation where it's people who grew up with the original, and not just people who watched it, but like we're talking about like people in their 30s, and this came out in like 2008. We finally got like a show where like people who working on it, who probably like seen and grew up with the original cartoon.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of tell with like how selective they were with what characters they use. Like these were clearly the favorites of the like Gen 1 cast. Do you think it's a little messed up that they didn't bring in RC like some other later ones have done? Like, oh, you're not going to put a girl robot on the team for a while? Come on, guys.
Oh, it's pretty fascinating because RC being part of like the original wave of Transformer is like really a modern Hasbro initiative of how they treat their toy lines now compared to past. Because past was like, you pick some Transformers, make a show, probably had that Optimus, Megatron, Starscream. But now it's more like, okay, we have like a tier 1 of Transformers with Optimus, Megatron, and Bumblebee, Starscream. Then you got tier 2, RC, Ironhide and stuff, and then you got like tier 3. So it's like, it's kind of like mandated to have RC now. And I don't think that was the case back in 2008. Because RC wasn't really, RC is like isn't technically like she isn't a wave 1 Transformer. She's wave 2, but she retroactively became wave 1 with like Optimus and Bumblebee and stuff. So I don't put too much blame into it because she appears in there. She's in the show.
And I mean, to give a shout out to my other main line of podcasts, Transcending Comics, like I'm going to go ahead and count RC as trans rep, because I know in some comic continuities, like gender is a construct that the Cybertronians found on other planets, and therefore all female Transformers are trans. So shout out to RC is a pretty cool trans robot representation.
I heard that storyline's pretty fucked up though. So
You know what? Trans history is fucked up sometimes, and you got to take and pick what you can.
but yeah, it was the lineup was like the five is like the literary trend of like a 5-man band. You have the leader, you have Optimus Prime, you have the heart of the team, which is Bulkhead. You have the Lancer, which is like Prowl, because he's the one who like disobeys. You have the tech guy and
Ratchet,
yeah. And Bumblebee is, I don't know. Oh no, Bulkhead is the strong guy in that 5-man band, and Bumblebee's the heart of the team.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like to the T, like 5-man band. And I think this Optimus Prime I would call more so as Cyclops from X-Men. This is like that's what I think he's more like, where he's like team leader, but he's not like the commander leader. Like he's like the field leader.
Yeah, and also like I love Cyclops, but like this is the kind of field leader that like he has his lame moments. Like he's always getting on Prowl's ass for like not
He doesn't have the
announcing
respect.
his moves. Yeah. And I'm like, hey, Prowl's the only one who does anything cool in this. Excuse him for not telegraphing his moves, Optimus.
Yeah, it's weird. They went liberties with Prowl. He's like a ninja. He becomes a samurai at the end too.
Oh, very cool.
Ratchet, this is old. The old guy. Bumblebee wasn't even supposed to be Bumblebee when the show was developed.
Was he also going to be like, I don't know, Hot Shot?
Yeah, he's supposed to be Hot Shot.
Ah.
And Hot Shot is just Hot Rod, because they couldn't use Hot Rod, so they named Hot Shot, and they couldn't use Bumblebee, so they made him a mini con and Armada. So it was like last minute change to make him Bumblebee. So it's kind of weird, Bumblebee like characterization. But I'm really happy this is before the movie took influences, because it was a long stretch of time for every adaptation to make Bumblebee can't talk. This is like the last Transformer cartoon for a good minute that Bumblebee can actually talk in. Because Prime had the radio thing.
Yeah, I'm really not a fan of that as a development. Like, I'll take it in the Michael Bay movies as like a character aspect, but like I don't need that in other franchises.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think I like how menacing they make Megatron in this.
Oh yeah, he's like 2 or 3 times the size of the rest of them. Like,
that was a fact the designer said, because and in G1 they made like pretty much, he had Bumblebee, Cliff Jumper, and like kind of like the mini ones.
Yeah, the cassette tapes on the Decepticon side too.
Yeah, but I think they said like, oh yeah, I looked at a truck, and then I looked at an airplane, and like airplane is like way bigger than a truck and like a car. So like we should make them bigger.
Yeah, and like it makes the fights feel pretty hopeless when like yeah, you can see how Megatron can easily handle the whole team, like going after him at once.
Yeah, and it's cool too, because it's like it's different for sure from G1, but it's pretty much the same plot beats happen, just a different way. Like, okay, Decepticons, the Autobots are in space, then in a ship, then the Decepticons come to their ship, they get attacked, and then they go to a space warp into Earth. And this one I actually like. I like that them coming before, like they had to do a time skip when they crash, actually plot relevant. It is only matters in this one, because the rest of the time is like, okay, it's 4 million years they've been in stasis, but it doesn't really narratively matter that they're in stasis for that long. It's just 4 million years. They could have just crash landed and the show just started there. But this time it actually mattered, because it's like an ending reveal, but like they the scientists and why Detroit and animated is so like technology focused is all because of Autobot technology.
And something my girlfriend and I picked up on that's kind of weird. I don't know if this is a complete coincidence or not, and I really hope this doesn't get me canceled, not culturally, but more legally and or from life. But the G1 Transformers origin is a lot like the mythos of Scientology, of like, like seriously, these warring aliens crash into a volcano and lie dormant and then come out, and like they're in disguise as a lot of the evils of the world. They're our war machines and industrialization and stuff. Like, there's a few too many parallels for it to feel like a complete coincidence. So I kind of wonder, like, was someone on the Transformers team, a little into Dianetics or friends of the
That's
L. Ron
pretty
Hubbard?
funny. But I like it though. Like I really think that's cool to play with that element of like them crash landing mad because it's not like a million years like before. It's like I think it's like 40 or something.
Yeah, it's like 50 years, and then we see like that's had influence on the world, which I think is part of what makes me bummed about how much I dislike the human interactions in this, because I do think the human world they created is really interesting, and I like how it lends itself to problems that aren't just the Decepticons being up to no good. Like there's like Earth-made robots causing problems, right? Monsters and supervillains.
Yeah, it's the only Transformer show where I would call the Transformers actually like superheroes.
Mm,
They have a city to defend. They're the protector. Again, them being robots is not a big deal. Like they're not really disguises, and they just fight like for the first like good portion of the season. They're just fighting like supervillains, and I think it does is make the structure of the show a lot different than most Transformer shows, where it's like, okay, we're Autobots versus Decepticons. No, Decepticons in the show are a lot more of a threat because there's less of them because they're not currently at war, and they pop up like less frequently at first, so they're like bigger threat because it's like one Decepticon is enough for the whole team to fight 5 Autobots,
mm.
compared to just having like 12 versus 12. Because you know, I mean, Starscream, I want to say like is casted perfectly in the show. It's Tom Kenny, voices SpongeBob. It's just I think it's perfect, and it's a Lindsay Ellis video on like Starscream. It's really interesting. One thing she knows, it's only two ways you can write Starscream. You either got to make Megatron an idiot, or you got to have Megatron get rid of Starscream as fast as possible. And this is one of the ones where they have to, Megatron just like, yeah, I hate you, Starscream.
Yeah, I like when they give Starscream a reason to be around, or like I mean, modern comics, like he just is successful right off the bat. Like I don't know, it's so weird to me that like in the Michael Bay movies, Starscream like is actually completely loyal to Megatron. He never betrays him in all of those movies.
Which is, you know, Michael Bay probably, Michael Bay. You didn't care about the source
Yeah,
material that much. Because I mean that's just Starscream's character, you know, like he betrays Megatron. He's a schemer. And you're not gonna do that. You just, you just don't care. You're too busy making Wheeljack like Albert Einstein.
yeah. Yeah, they had much more interesting things to explore with Transformers in world history than just showing evil Starscream.
Yeah, it doesn't help that Starscream's appearance was in the writer strike movie.
Wait, what?
Yeah, the second Transformer 2, when like Starscream had a big like role in it, that was during the writer strike.
Oh, yikes. But yeah, like back on the cartoon, since I know this one like has a little bit more nostalgic value for you, like I mean I'm not a huge one for watching children's cartoons now unless they're really good, like I don't know, She-Ra or Steven Universe. But is there story beats later on that you would say are worth me like sticking through or at least like jumping ahead to check out?
Oh yeah, I mean, it starts out pretty monster of the week. Well, not, it's just the beginning starting with season 2. That's when you really get more like the Decepticons and more Autobots coming to Earth and stuff. But the first couple episodes are kind of a slow build of like we've on Earth being superheroes, but it's a lot of man. It gets really good. It gets sad too with Ratchet, and you see Ratchet having PTSD and being a war hero, and RC plot line is pretty sad, and the Black Tarantula. It's just good stuff. I think this is the second best Transformers cartoon next to Beast Wars.
Hmm.
And it kind of fits in what I like with Transformer. I like the small team at first. You slowly build up to more out there elements. I think it's worth checking out. Yeah, I just think it's a good show. It's really celebrating the community and the fandom.
Yeah, like you're not the only one I've heard speak highly of it. And like I think I wish my younger self had given this more of a chance and not written it off. But in their defense, like after falling in love with the first Transformers Michael Bay movie, like I went back and watched the whole first season of G1 and Beast Wars. So like I got my Transformers knowledge in and at least consumed the important bits when I had the hyper obsession for about a year.
Yeah, it's weird because I never mind the art style because I just thought the robots looked so cool. Like I never had like, oh, these guys look ugly, but maybe I'm just used to that like Derek J. Wyatt style so much. I watch like Ben 10 Omniverse, which is like not 90 episodes of his art style, and it's like I'm just accustomed to. And I watch Mystery Incorporated too, so like I'm just a fan of how weird his characters look.
I was really glad when Optimus and a couple of the others at least have faceplates when the action happens, because like Transformers with lips, a little bit weird for me, at least in this style, but I also understand how that's really helpful for making these things emote. So it's not just like a static, solid object that like has to fully rely on voice acting to convey emotion.
Sure, it's easy to animate though, so with the having the faceplates.
Let's see. Any final notes on Transformers Animated before we get into the Skybound comics?
No, I just think it's like, if anything, if like you don't want to watch early CGI and want a good Transformer show, I mean, this is, I say, the go-to for animated. It's an interesting take. I think it's worth checking out. It's on Tubi for free with the rest of the shows.
Yeah, there's a lot of good Transformers content on Tubi as well. Like I didn't expect that to be like the platform for it.
Yeah, that's where I watch Beast Wars at.
Yeah, which like I got to give a shout out to Tubi for being maybe the MVP of streaming platforms right now. Like I feel like every niche interest I have, even when it comes to my tokusatsu stuff, like they've got a lot of like Super Sentai and Power Ranger seasons on there, whereas like all the other streaming services are starting to learn like, hey, if this thing isn't making us money or bringing people in, why are we even showing it? And I hate that. I want there to be a big full catalog of my weird niche interests to watch when I want. So thank you, Tubi. I don't care if I have to watch ads. I get it. And you're not egregious with them. So Tubi, you're doing good. You're doing the Lord's work, and you don't even make me create account.
Yeah, it's Netflix from 10 years ago.
Never change, Tubi.
All right, we're going to Skybound. You know, I think one thing I think a lot of people are insecure about, something new comes out and you think it's like your best favorite thing ever, but you don't want to say it's your favorite thing ever because it's not hasn't been enough time. But I think Skybound Transformer comic is my favorite take on Transformers ever.
It's at least far and away the strongest start I've ever seen in one of these. Like it takes the familiar premise, but just like turns it up a lot. It makes it more serious than even like the Michael Bay movies were. And yeah, like I have been a little behind, but I read the first 3 issues last year and was like, well, this rules. And I saw this on a lot of people's like best of the year list. And Daniel Warren Johnson is someone I really want to like do a deep dive of, because people also list like Do a Power Bomb and Murder Falcon and his other work as like some of their favorite books of all time or the favorite books of the years those came out.
Oh yeah, I mean top 3 last year. You know, I think Transformer I had number 2. I know it was like, yeah, it was World's Finest, Transformers, and then Rogue Sun and Wonder Woman for fighting for number 3. So yeah, I really enjoy every month getting Transformers, and I really, as a Robert Kirkman fan, Invincible and Walking Dead fan, I really like the approach they did with licensed comics. Like I think with licensed comics and stuff, a lot of licensed comics, especially like the 80s and 90s, they were treated like, what do you call it, like licensed video games from the past, like where it's like, oh, we're just gonna make a crappy tie-in video game of so and so IP and it's not that good. And you know, Transformers isn't like that with Transformers for that franchise, but that IW run and stuff like that. But I don't know, it's like I think he really was like, okay, we're gonna treat this like Marvel Spider-Man, or yeah, I guess a better example would be like, oh, Spider-Man and plus like the Arkham games. It's like, okay, we're gonna take this license and I'm just gonna put the best talent in the industry on it, because a lot of indie books don't get like the S tier curators like Transformers and GI Joe's getting right now. I mean, I think Scarlet GI Joe got Kelly Thompson, and she's like the go-to for female superheroes with Birds of Prey and Captain Marvel. We got Joshua Williamson on GI Joe right now, and it's like, oh, Robert Kirkman like spending money.
And like what I've seen of these other books have been awesome, and like I think this is some of the best like handling of an extended universe I've seen, at least this early on. Of like, it's not making me feel like I have to read the other books, but it really makes me want to. And it puts just enough like at the end of books or just enough references that it's like, okay, there's more here. Like Void Rivals has some cool like of the space opera Transformers stuff from later years. The free comic book day issue had some awesome stuff with like Megatron being involved in Cobra's history. And like, I haven't felt like I'm missing anything in the first 8 issues of Transformers, but like, I I don't have a deep-seated love of G.I. Joe, but I will probably buy those trades now because like everything I've seen has been really cool. Everything I've heard has been really good. And like I want to see more from this world and how they're having all these properties intertwine.
I was hesitant because I haven't picked up a monthly Transformer comic ever. It was like this looks like really good, so it's like okay, I'm gonna give this a try, and I was like blown away because it's like all the elements I like about Transformers in this. I could tell like the creator was like grew up with Transformers. It's one thing I noticed watching the cartoon and then rereading issue number one because when I was in the movie theater, it was like when the Ark is repairing all of the Decepticons and Transformers, and Decepticons get repaired first. And I'm like, why don't they just shoot the Autobots when they're down? Why don't they just kill them now? Then I cut to like the Skybound issue number one. What do? They start killing the Autobots when they're not alive.
Yeah, they blow Bumblebee's freaking head off. Like, I don't think he's gonna get a single line in this series.
So that's like us as Power Ranger fan be like, oh, let's shoot them when they're morphing. That's like some like as a kid, you just think about like why don't you do that? And then you finally get a time many decades later as an adult to like, oh yeah, I'm gonna actually tackle that now. Cause that didn't really bother me. It's like all the Decepticons in the cartoon get repaired and like they just leave and then let the Autobots get repaired. And this one is like, oh, Starscream get repaired. I'm gonna start shooting them.
I love how gruesome it's willing to get both on the against Transformers and the humans. Like that the first issue ends with Starscream just picking a guy up and like, oh, they're so squishy, and like Attack on Titan style, like blood's just gushing from his hand, and that's the end of the issue.
Yeah.
Oh, we're going this route. All right, sign me the fuck up.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite Transformers scenes ever, and it was like, oh, this is like art. Like this is like, oh, like it's like when issue number two, Optimus Prime steps on like a deer, and like it's like the scene opens up like, okay, he's oh, he loves Earth, he loves nature, and like he's really enjoying it. Then he like steps on a deer, and he's like, oh, I didn't know like this world is so like fragile. And it's like, oh, it's such a interesting cool moments. Like it felt very Iron Giant like.
I like how it managed to squeeze in these like really beautiful moments to give it a second to breathe. But other than that, like the first 6 issues are really fast paced. I mean, like shit hits the fan literally immediately. And like they're dealing with like, okay, we have like no fuel. The Decepticons have the upper hand. Like humans are starting to mob against us. Our little kid friend has been shot. Like
Yeah.
a lot is like everything is going wrong for them, and like it all feels so intense. And like I think it's a nice change of pace to see the start of the series like just start at an 11 and keep going. It's not the like, okay, we're gonna play it safe and like introduce all the things for 6 to 10 issues, and then we'll do some new things. Like no, the Transformers, all of you have grown up with some generation of it, so we're just gonna take this and freaking run.
Yeah, I like it too, because like before I said with the Beast Wars of like, Beast Wars started out with 4 Transformers. I think this one starts out with 4, I believe. It's Optimus, Cliff Jumper, Ratchet, and I think Wheeljack comes.
He's pretty quick after, and Jetfire's a little bit there.
He's there. He is messed up. But I like the smaller cast, and I think that's how Transformers should start. Because I mean, our criticism with both G1s is like, oh, so many characters at once. Like you can't really juggle all of them. But this time you slowly introduce them. And I think one thing I like about after watching and reading other media for this episode is that fuel actually matters in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And all the other ones is like, oh, we're low on energon. And it's like it didn't really matter that they were low on energon other than like just saying it. But this time it actually matters. They're like, oh, this is straight like resource management game. Like, oh, we just can't bring everyone back. We're trying to. I think they brought back Jazz, and it was pretty funny. Like they brought back Jazz during one of the fight scenes, and Jazz is like, "Oh, I'm only good for one tune," and then he powers off. So like them having like fuel is like a big issue, which is like pretty refreshing after reading all this. Where it's just like, oh, it's a downside, but it's not really a downside because it never factors in. It's like G1 comic had it like 3 times where it's like, oh yeah, we can't do any more action because we're low on fuel.
It's like Spider-Man's web shooters. Like they run
Yeah.
out when it's convenient to the story. Whereas here, like I'm surprised people haven't leaned into that more when like, yeah, all these robots are cars. What do cars do? They run out of gas. Like that probably should have been one of your main focuses. Like I know they're going after fuel, but yeah, they never take it this seriously or yeah, treat it as such a precious resource.
Yeah, the only time where it kind of mattered was like in G1 comic where it's like Buster Dad is like magically the only one who can turn like normal car fuel into energy. I don't think it's called energon in the G1 comic. It's just called like fuel.
Yeah, I
And it's
noticed that.
like
Yeah, the word energon's never used in those first four issues, but like they're still like, yeah, we're robots, we need fuel.
but yeah, I really like that you can slowly introduce more and more trends. I'm a big like strategy gamer and like I like games like XCOM. So having like a resource management in a story is really intriguing to me.
Mm. And like it's very clear they're having to pick and choose who they can repair, and like they're having to cannibalize some people or some parts. And yeah, seeing that with the Decepticons especially is like a
Gruesome.
really interesting twist. But I'm curious, how far are you into the series so far?
Oh, I'm caught up.
Okay, I'm a few pages away from finishing issue 8. That's like literally what I was doing before we started recording. But like this was the only thing of what we consume for this episode that I'm like, more please now. Like, and thankfully, yeah, I had every issue up to the current one, so I just kept going after issue 4. But like, wow, I'm a little bummed that I'm already caught up. Like I want I'm glad I'll have other books that I can read from here. Like I know there's a lot of Transformers stuff in Void Rivals, so I suppose I can just hop over to that to get my fix for a while.
Yeah, I mean the book looks great. The coloring is amazing. You always gotta give credit to colorists. The coloring in this book's amazing. Human characters is the best so far. Like Spike, and his
Hmm.
dad are the most interesting adaptation of these
Carly's pretty cool
characters.
too.
Yeah, Carly's cool, especially in the later issues. Um, it's really it's just the Transformers can just I think it really tackles with the themes of like giving life versus taking life because it's something actually in the G1 comics where it's like a lot of weird god isms of like they just make Transformers in G1 comics like they just like Skyfire and like the a lot they just create life like
Mm.
just make new Transformers on Earth and it kind of tackles that theme in the Skybound comics where like Autobots give life and they sacrifice their own life to give the life to other beings while like the Decepticons take life to give other people life. It's pretty interesting those type of themes. And like
Mm.
Starscream actually as the leader is actually fascinating too as a twist.
Yeah, and I like that we get to start off with that and see how that goes because like we've seen a million takes of Megatron as the leader, but like getting to kick off with like Starscream successful, the Autobots are like on their last legs, and also the general hopelessness of it. Like even Optimus is not an optimist. Like halfway through this, like he's giving up. Like, yeah, I guess we really are done. There isn't any hope. And carry on, guys.
Yeah, this Optimus is like the most like I called him like Gridman slash Superman. Like he's the most like in my opinion the less not I wouldn't even call Robo Dad. Like he's the most like he's not optimist like you said, but he's like he would be an optimist. Like we've seen him as like his down arc, but he seems the most less like a strong military soldier or commander and more like okay, like Superman when he's having a bad day. Like he's
Mm,
really caring. Like he
yeah.
always want like he's trying to kill himself most of the time. Like, oh, like let me just use the Matrix. Let me use the Matrix. Let me just heal people. Let me just save people.
Oh yeah, and that they are doing Robo Dad in a really interesting way with this. So like spoilers for issue 6 and beyond, but like Spike's dad goes into the Matrix of leadership, and
He's
now
actually a robot.
Optimus is like having flashbacks of Spike and Spike's older brother as kids, and like okay, that's really cool how they're like, yeah, we know a lot of people saw Optimus as like the perfect dad. Now we're gonna like play with that in a literal sense of like he's kind of a dad and navigating that.
Yeah, it's cool how they're playing with like the Matrix of leadership in this because in animated they had like the Allspark they play with.
Mm,
We didn't get to the point in either the comic, but they have like the Matrix of life in the comics that get introduced, and that I think Buster makes Skyfire and that on Earth. Like they just make Transformers and make life. And in the G1 cartoon, they retcon in the Matrix of Leadership in the movie.
Okay.
That was not a thing. That was made for the movie.
Huh. Yeah, like I know there's a lot of surprisingly deep lore that's introduced pretty early on. I had no idea that the movie is what invented that, and now that's like a cornerstone of the franchise.
Yeah, that's a big thing to introduce because it was like the way to pass the torch. But that was a pure because like I said earlier, that was the movie was made during the same. I don't think the teams it was like the same team or anything worked on the movie and the cartoon. So it was literally like, oh yeah, we need a new leader. We need to make a new toy leader. So we did all that. But it's pretty fascinating that how they did that because it's a lot of like small lore references in this Skybound comic. Like we have cameos of the dead lifeless bodies of the Transformers of the Wave 1 in the Skybound comics of them just laying on the floor because all they did is like they put all the bodies in the trailer. The Starscream and Skyfire knowing each other, that was a thing in G1 cartoon. They used to be friends.
Yeah, and that like weird kind of side changing Jetfire, and yeah, most recent issue they're doing some really dark like Transformers body horror with Jetfire, and I'm very interested to see where that goes. And like,
yeah, and that's I don't know how much he read of G1 because G1 had like a lot of body horror. Like it was a part where like Ratchet and Megatron were like in the same body, and it's gruesome.
One thing I'm curious about with the Transformers, so like, of course my Power Rangers loving mind has the idea of like, the human body is kind of a Megazord. Like we're all like billions of smaller life forms like within all our cells. Like the human body contains all kinds of bacteria, and who knows how sentient anything smaller than us is. But like, did the Transformers have that? Like, are there little like Transformer germs going through their body or blood cells, immune systems?
Not that I know of. It's because the Transformer body isn't as important as because they have the spark, like the Transformer soul. Which the fun fact about that's not even a G1 thing, like of the spark. That's a Beast Wars concept.
Oh,
that was first introduced in Beast Wars of like Transformers as sparks. So their body's not even like a main concern. It's all about the spark. It's like if you extinguish the spark, that's how you kill a Transformer, not the end of it, like not the body itself.
Okay, and I can see how that would come as like people start to get a better understanding of computers and programs because like yeah, like most people didn't have a computer in 1984, but by the 90s when Beast Wars comes around, I would think people working in digital animation would know like, oh yeah, you can move a program to one thing or another.
Mainframe first cartoon was literally about being inside a computer with Reboot.
Oh, good point. Yeah, like, and I know that's really right up your alley with that, like a sci-fi early.
Call back to Gridman. I love cyberspace stories. So yeah, the in Starscream comes back because they retcon that Starscream dies, but he comes, his ghost appears in G1. They say like his spark's still alive, so he comes back in Beast Wars. Like Beast, and I don't know. I wish I could talk about Beast Wars, but it's just so because Beast Wars isn't like a reboot adaptation. It's a sequel to G1. I mean, it's not even spoiled at this point. It's like 30 years, but it's like you see like the G1 Transformers and Beast Wars because it takes place. It's like a time travel thing where like they actually go back in time, and the Beast Wars take place on Earth while the Transformers are in stasis. And you can see by scales too, like the Transformers are big and like they're like animal size.
And I love like they didn't need to do that. Like this was before people
had twist.
Yeah. And like I don't know if any of the kids watching Beast Wars would hardly even know the old ones, but like I guess there would like I knew the original cartoons from VHS tapes at the video store, but
they're getting hate. It was a big thing about not Gorilla is Truck. That was like the online forum thing in the 90s. Like we want the Truck, not Gorilla. So online trolls always been a thing in that section of online space. Nostalgic fans.
I was so sad that like when we finally got the like Maximals in the most recent live action Transformers,
it has nothing to do with them.
Yeah, like they didn't need to be there. The being animals wasn't anything. Like I I saw that movie within the last year, and like I remember the Pete Davidson robot, the subtle nods to Power Rangers, and that's about it. Like I
We
couldn't
didn't.
tell
We
you
didn't even
one
have the
thing about
best
the next
one. We
ones.
didn't have my favorite like Beast Wars Transformer. They have my boy
Uh,
Rat Trap.
oh yeah, there wasn't a red. That's messed up. They could have done something fun and little with him with Tiny Transformer.
But yeah, it was yeah, that movie's just all over the place. Like Unicron's finally in a movie, but it's in the Beast Wars movie, and I mean Beast Wars, they were just robot animals. I mean, because it's like I don't know, it's like it seemed like an executive made that movie because it's like the idea and the fun part about Beast Wars isn't that they're just robots with like alt mode animals. Like we already had that in G1. We had
Yeah.
multiple, like we had Dinobots and like multiple things. Like no, they were like actual look like the animals. They should have been
Mhm.
in like a zoo somewhere, like in to scale of normal animals, not just giant animal robots. I don't know. It's that movie's weird.
See, anything you want to add before I move us to the question of the week?
Oh yeah, I just Cliff Jumper, like Cliff Jumper, especially in this. I kind
Mm,
of like he personality wise, they really nailed it between like the G1 cartoon and Skybound. I felt like
mm.
they really nailed that character. I'm happy we got to see Red Bumblebee for this one compared to see I've had Bumblebee. Because I remember when they revealed it, it was kind of cute and cheeky with it because it was like all the silhouettes of all the Transformers. So you kind of knew because you kind of can tell Optimus, Ratchet, Wheeljack. So it was like, oh, the starting lineup is going to be Optimus, Wheeljack, Ratchet, Bumblebee, and RC. And then it's like Cliff Jumper that caught everybody off guard.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that Daniel Warren Johnson had a Cliff Jumper figure growing up, and maybe not a Bumblebee.
It had to, it's literally the same toy but red.
And there's a pink Transformer that's on Cybertron. They've shown a few times. I thought it was RC the first few
Oh
times I
no,
saw her.
that's the leader one.
Alita one. Okay.
She was the original female Transformer from G1 cartoons.
And
She just didn't get a toy.
wonder if that's got to be
RC,
an.
I don't think RC got a toy either.
It's got to be like an Alita Battle Angel reference, right?
Yeah, because the thing about RC was they had like the producer begged to put RC in it in the movie. It's
Hmm.
like my daughter would like a Transformer.
I love getting RC this early. We haven't seen her a ton, but I feel like their portrayal of her so far has been pretty cool too. And yeah, having Alita be like a badass on Cybertron has been a fun couple pages so far.
Yeah, it's nice.
So moving us on to the question of the week. I think we've probably already answered this question in this episode, but we've got more to unpack here. So if you could have the Transformers crossover with one other franchise, what would it be? And what would be the added transforming gimmick you would want featured in the Transformer, as far as like maybe other characters from the other franchise transforming, or something about them being brought back to the Transformers universe?
That's a tough one. I'd be really interested in seeing a Ben 10 Transformer crossover. I think it's pretty
Hmm.
interesting because Ben 10 is all about different alien races. His watch is made to analyze different alien life. So it'd be kind of interesting to see, Ben transform into a transformer because that's an alien. Ben also has an alien called Upgrade, where it's the whole gimmick of that alien is like he's like a orb, a goop of like nanobots that he can go into mechanical life and upgrade them and like just make them super modes and stuff. So that alien existence plus Transformers is pretty interesting. And I think Uncle Max, Ben like grandpa, that's like a crazy accomplished plumber, which is like the space Nick Fury. Would
Hmm.
be pretty interesting to interact with Optimus Prime.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of fun stuff to play there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like you could incorporate the Omnitrix into like an Autobot or Decepticon, do something cool with that, like transform into all kinds of different modes that way.
Yeah, I mean, just having Ben transform to an Autobot or so transform would be pretty. It's pretty
Oh,
cool because you
yeah.
just they're aliens. He has robot aliens already, so you just got to scan them, and that'd be pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, I would love to see what Ben would turn into as a Cybertronian. That'd be
Yeah, it'd
cool.
be interesting because his watch transforms him into the peak version of that species. So it'd be like the peak transformer. I don't know what that would be.
That'd be a cool like final act thing of what they have to deal with is like Ben resorts to that, but the peak transformer is like Unicron. So like, oh crap, Ben turned into Unicron. We have to deal with that now.
Yeah, this is Ben 10 has like villains like Vilgax, that's just basically like the stereotypical Saturday morning cartoon. So you can team that up with Megatron, and it's a lot of fun stuff you can do with that premise. Just because like Transformers are this, I think it's like most interesting because it's like Transformers are aliens technically, but they're not like the typical aliens. So it'd be an interesting crossover there.
Now, I think we both know where I'm going with my answer, but like, of course, I want to see a Transformers Power Rangers crossover more than freaking anything. But as for the gimmick I'd want to see, I think I'd want like maybe you set this after they've lost the first generation of their Zords, like season 2 or 3. But I want to see them take the original Dino Megazords and turn them into like triple changers, and like have each of them have their own like warrior like Autobot mode. And who knows, maybe they're dealing with some level of, oh crap, our Zords are like more sentient now and they have some thoughts.
Oh, I didn't know I thought you were about to say they get the Dinobots.
I mean, yeah, the Dinobots obviously got to be featured. Like maybe you do the combiner thing, but I'm a little afraid to share with like the worst Transformers comic of all time.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it's kind of, I think Zordon meeting Optimus Prime would be pretty interesting. Maybe you can do some stuff with like Zordon AI gets inside like a Transformer. That'd be kind of interesting. Have Zordon actually be in action.
I don't know if I'm flushing my chances to get to write this someday, should the stars align, but like what I personally think right now, like I'd want this to take place in season 3, like have the Rangers have like the Shogun Zords, so each of them has like something that can go toe to toe with a Autobot or Decepticon, and then that's them like dealing with, oh well, like the old Zords got touched by the Allspark or Matrix leadership or something, and hijinks ensue. And timeline wise, I would also work like, okay, if this gets a sequel, Decepticons meet Machine Empire. That like there's a lot of really good ammunition to work with there.
You gotta go full on just do turbo.
Yeah, I mean,
see them driving the Autobots.
I genuinely would love to write Power Rangers Turbo. Like, I mean, my dream is to write Power Rangers Zeo someday, but I don't think that's gonna work out just with timing and where that franchise is going. But like, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people lining up to write Power Rangers Turbo, and I've got some ideas. Boom. Please call me.
But yeah, I wanted my originally honorable mentions. DC Transformers, that was a thing. It's artwork out there. Got destroyed in the crossfire. Well, not in the crossfire, as area effect damage of good old Barry Allen resetting the timeline. They canceled it because of Flashpoint of New 52. So there's artwork out there like Transformers with the Justice League. But it was going to be set in, pre 52, and it's like, okay, we're not going to start the brand new universe off with a Transformers crossover because it's Avengers. It's a Bendis run. I don't think Bendis wrote it, but it's a new Avengers Transformers crossover.
Yeah, I'm curious if that deals with like the Transformers having technically been in the Marvel universe all these years.
I didn't think about that. That'd be funny if it did.
Yeah.
What else? I wanted to say Godzilla too, but it's a scale issue there.
You got some that could kind of work. I mean, you got like Trypticon and Metroplex and like maybe some of the smaller kaiju you can work with. I don't know.
I don't see a story there because I don't care about maybe Omega Supreme versus Godzilla, but it's like all the Transformers I care about. Unless you make them like humongous, it's not going to be a good crossover. Unless you get what's the guy name? It looks like Ultraman, but it's not Ultraman.
Oh, Jet Jaguar. Yeah.
Unless you get some Jet Jaguar technology, just make Optimus Prime big.
Hey, yeah, I can work with that. Also, I don't know who's got the GoBots IP right now, but like
Hasbro do.
Just give us that like G1 Transformers meet the GoBots. Let's just see how it goes.
Hasbro actually has the rights to GoBots. They has appeared as joke characters in IDW, right? You want the GoBots, I want the Rock Lords.
Okay, wow, deep cuts.
That was GoBots movie, The Rise of the Rock Lords.
Huh.
That was their movie. That was their Transformers movie.
Like it does. How's it compare quality wise? Is it
it's
like
the same anime? Look, we did not. Look, this is Hanna-Barbera. Okay, this is Hanna-Barbera animation. Just 90 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna don't think it got the will in me. I don't have that dog in me, Nate.
But you're not gonna, we're never gonna get that chance of someone being artistic. I mean, like, I got the rights to the GoBots. Let me make my GoBots, what do you call it? Like Miracle Man and Shazam version of GoBots, and
Ooh,
just make a
yeah.
whole different take. No, Hasbro nipped that in the bud. They just bought them out. They just bought GoBot. They bought them a long time ago too. Like, they just bought the competition out, and they're not gonna use them.
Like, come on. Like, we
Like
have
Coke bought Pepsi.
anti-monopoly laws exist for a reason. Like, make Hasbro sell GoBots.
They might actually, based on the financial status of Hasbro at the moment, this might be the best opportunity for someone to buy GoBots.
Yeah. I don't know, license them out. Just be like, okay, here's our transforming robot toy line that you can do whatever you want. Go crazy. And someone will make something cool, I promise.
Who cares about the GoBots? I get the Street Sharks. I get the Street. GoBots came out first too. That's the craziest part.
Yeah, I mean,
It just had a worse cartoon and worse media.
There's some fundamental part of human nature that knows robots that turn into cars are frickin' badass. And that's why Japan had multiple lines of toys that did just that. And it's why this franchise has lasted year after year, and why we'll always be buying Transformers for our kids, because part of us will always know robots that turn into other things is the coolest thing you can possibly make a toy out of.
Yeah, because it's not even just like, it's like a little mini game too, of like having to like transform and detransform them. It's like a puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, I've been stimming doing Rubik's Cubes through half this episode, so like that's basically what a Transformer is.
It's crazy how this franchise turned out. It's kind of like a pirate situation where it's like, oh, we just got the rights to this random stuff. We got to make a wholly different IP. And the only difference between Power Ranger and Transformers is it'd be like if Power Rangers was such a big of a success that they got rid of Super Sentai to make Power Rangers in Japan. Because that's what happened to the Transformers. They just, Transformers came out. It was like, okay, all this stuff, we make Transformers now. These are Transformers, and we're gonna even make more cartoons past the original American run.
Like, I know Power Rangers has like a pretty unique history among itself, and like there's a lot of interesting bits there, but like every time we try to adapt something from Japan over here, like it becomes its own weird thing, and I love that for us. Like, I know Voltron is like a bigger thing there. Like, sorry, our version of Voltron took
line
off.
Is not like a IP that anybody care about in Japan.
But yeah, the Robotech, like, oh my god, that's maybe the wildest of all.
And Robotech has a connection to Transformers.
Yeah,
with Skyfire and the rights there. I think they just got a Robotech toy and licensed it out.
All right, well, I know you and I can rant about like the history of Transformers and everything we love about 80s cartoons all night, but I feel like we should probably wrap things up here unless you got anything else you want to make sure we touch on or anything you want to plug.
No, that's it.
All right, well, thank you again, Nate, for making the time to come on the show and for rewatching old cartoons, rereading old comics with me. It's always a pleasure to have you deep dive into franchises.
You're welcome.
All right, and to our listeners at home, if you have a request or recommendation for content you'd like us to cover in the future, you can send them our way on social media. You can find us on the Giant Size Violence Facebook page and on Twitter as @UltraMegaCast. Or you can email us at giantsizeviolence@gmail.com. Also, if you'd like to support the show, we've just launched our first ever Patreon for Keymaster Collective, the multimedia parent company covering Giant Size Violence, Transcending Comics, and our upcoming comic, When We Transform. If you'd like us to help bring these ideas to life and take these ideas to the next level, consider supporting, and if not, consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We'd like to shout out Ray Day Parade and Dark Moon Home Video for designing our logo and cover photos. And our intro and outro music is You Are an Ace Kid by Demon Dice from their album Alcatraz. Check out their EP, Shut Up, Get Happy on iTunes and Spotify. We hope you join us again as we continue to explore the world of tokusatsu comics. But until then, take care and remember to do your part in preventing the spread of the kaiju virus.
Freedom can't be seen by downcast eyes. So raise your gaze up till your 10 feet tall and shake your fist to the sky. Refuse to die or let them make you small. Cause they love just to see you convinced you're just a brick in the wall. But you're not just a brick in the wall. La da da.